The officers stepped out of the car, their boots crunching against the gravel. One of them adjusted his belt, glancing at me with suspicion, while the other listened to the woman's shrill accusations. He broke into my property, she cried, clutching the fence like she was a victim. We were terrified when he showed up uninvited. I wanted to laugh, but my anger kept it buried. My property, this cabin had been mine for years. Every nail, every board, every tree I planted out front, it was all under my name. Yet here I was being treated like a stranger. One officer walked closer. Sir, we're going to need to see some ID. Step over here. I could feel the party guests watching, whispers flying between them. Some were already recording on their phones, waiting to see me dragged away. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my wallet, not out of fear of the cops, but from the humiliation of standing there like a criminal outside my own home. The woman leaned toward the officers, lowering her voice, but loud enough for me to hear. I told you he's been hanging around here before. He's dangerous. Please get him out. That was the moment my patient snapped. I handed over my ID, staring directly at her. You sure you want them to run my name? For the first time, she blinked, her confident smirk faltering. She didn't know my background. She didn't know what would come up when the officers checked. And when they did, things were about to turn very, very different. The officer held my license under the afternoon sun, squinting as he read the details. His partner typed into the tablet mounted on the squad car. The woman crossed her arms with a smug grin, whispering to one of her guests. Finally, this creep is getting hauled off. Seconds ticked by. The guests chuckled, lifting their glasses again, like this was part of the entertainment. My fists tightened, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had learned long ago, never explode too early. Let them dig their own hole first. Then the officer looked up, confusion flashing across his face. He turned the screen toward his partner, and they both exchanged a look. Sir, the taller cop said, it says here, you're the registered owner of this cabin. The table went silent. The smug laughter froze in the air. The woman's eyes widened, but she recovered fast, pushing a fake smile. Oh, no, that can't be right. You must have the wrong record. I'm with the homeowners association, and this property falls under our rules. Her words made my blood boil. I had no HOA. I made sure of that when I bought this land. I stepped forward, my voice calm but heavy. There is no HOA here. You forged your way onto my property, and you threw parties in my house while I was gone. A couple of the guests shifted uncomfortably. One woman muttered, Wait, you mean this isn't your place? The Karen's face turned red, her mask cracking. Don't believe him? She screamed. He's dangerous. I saw him snooping around before. The shorter cop raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, he's not snooping. He's the legal owner. And then, just as her lies started to crumble, another twist came. The second officer pulled me aside, his tone low but urgent. Sir, we found something else, connected to your name in the system. Something she definitely doesn't know about. Her fake confidence flickered again, and this time she looked scared. I tilted my head, curious. Something else? I asked quietly. The officer nodded, his eyes steady. Yes, sir. Military service. Special operations. You're listed as decorated. The woman's smile faltered, her mouth hanging slightly open as the words slipped into the air. The guests whispered louder, now some of them leaning back like they didn't want to be caught on the wrong side of this fight. I didn't say a word. I just let the silence do the work. The Cop continued louder this time so everyone could hear. Ma'am, you said this man was dangerous. You're right. He's dangerous to anyone breaking the law. He's a veteran, and by the looks of it, the rightful property owner, her hands shook against the fence, but she kept her chin high, desperate to keep her role as the victim. This is insane. He's lying to all of you. He probably faked those records. Don't you see? He's tried to take over this place. That was when I finally stepped closer, my voice steady but sharp as a knife. Take over. Lady, this is my land. You're the one throwing parties, drinking my wine, and lying to officers. You forged authority. You don't have, and now you're panicking because it's catching up to you. One of the guests, the smug man who had been laughing earlier, stood up, his voice uneasy. Wait, if this is his place, then what are we doing here? The Karen spun around, snapping at him. Shut up. Don't listen to him. He's just trying to scare you. But she froze mid-sentence when the shorter cop pulled out a small folder. Funny thing, ma'am. He said, we got a call earlier this week about fake HOA. Notices being taped on doors in this area. The description matches you. Care to explain. Her face drained of color. For the first time, she didn't have an answer, and the crowd that once cheered her on now stared at her like they were seeing a criminal in plain sight. She stammered, her hands fluttering like she was reaching for an excuse in the air. That's ridiculous. Why would I waste my time putting notices on doors? I was only trying to keep the neighborhood safe. The taller officer crossed his arms. Safe from what? A veteran returning to his own cabin. His words cut straight through her lies, and a couple of the guests started gathering their things, suddenly embarrassed to even be there. I let out a slow breath, then reached into my bag. She flinched, thinking I was about to pull something dangerous, but all I pulled out was a black hard drive. I held it up between my fingers. You know what this is? Security footage. Every corner of this cabin is wired. I already saw who unlocked my doors, who poured drinks in my kitchen, who laughed about me never finding out. Gasps rippled through the group. The man with the smug grin cursed under his breath, looking away. The Karen's face turned pale as chalk. You're bluffing, she whispered, her voice cracking. I smiled coldly. Am I? Because I can play it right here for the officers. And trust me, it's not just you caught on tape. It's everyone you invited. The shorter cop stepped closer, his tone firm. Sir, if you're willing to hand us that footage, we can verify everything. If what you're saying is true, this crosses into trespassing, fraud, and possibly even impersonating law enforcement. The Karen's knees buckled slightly, but she gripped the table to steady herself. She tried one last desperate move, raising her voice. For the crowd, he's lying. He's twisting everything. You all know me. I run this neighborhood. But nobody nodded. Nobody backed her up this time. The same guests who once clapped for her now looked at her like she was poison. And that's when I leaned in, my voice low and sharp. You said I don't belong here, but the truth is you're the intruder. And tonight, everyone will see you for exactly what you are. The taller cop motioned for me to hand over the hard drive, and I did, without hesitation. He passed it to his partner, who plugged it into the squad car system. Within seconds, the dash screen lit up, showing crystal clear footage. The woman unlocking my cabin door with a key she didn't own, waving in her guests like it was a private club. The gasps turned into full-on outrage. One of the women at the table covered her mouth. You said this was your place, she whispered to Karen. You lied to all of us. The smug man cursed again, standing quickly. You dragged me into this? Do you have any idea what kind of trouble this is? The Karen's eyes darted wildly. She tried to grab a wine glass to look casual, but her hands trembled too much, and it shattered against the deck. This doesn't prove anything, she shrieked. That footage could be fake. But then the recording shifted to another angle. Her taping a bright orange. Cho noticed on my front door, signing it with an official-sounding title that didn't even exist. The officers froze the frame, zooming in on her handwriting. The shorter cop turned toward her, voice cold. Ma'am, this is beyond a neighborhood dispute. This is forgery and trespassing. And if you've been collecting money or favors from these people under false authority, arrest her. One of the guests snapped bitterly, throwing down his napkin. She conned all of us. The Karen backed away, shaking her head violently, her voice breaking. No, you can't do this. You don't understand. I was protecting this community. But the flashing red and blue lights reflected in her wide, terrified eyes as the officers moved in. And for the first time since I stepped back onto my land, I finally felt the tide turning. I crossed my arms and whispered, just loud enough for her to hear. Game's over. The officers closed in, their radios crackling. One reached for his cuffs, but the Karen suddenly bolted toward the dock, heels clattering against the wood. The guests gasped, some shouting for her to stop. She glanced back once, her face twisted with desperation, and screamed, "You'll regret this. You don't know who I am." I stepped forward, my voice steady. "We know exactly who you are." The shorter cop caught up to her halfway down the dock. She tried to twist free, but when his grip locked on her wrist, the fight drained from her body. The clink of the cuffs echoed over the water. The guests stood frozen, ashamed, some already walking away quietly. The smug man muttered, "Unbelievable. She made us part of this mess." Before storming off, I walked past the broken glass and spilled wine up the steps of my own porch. My boots fell heavier with every step, not from fear anymore, but from the weight of reclaiming what was mine. The taller cop turned to me, his voice firm but respectful. "Sir, we'll need you to come down tomorrow to file an official statement. But tonight, she's not coming back here." For the first time all evening, I allowed myself a small smile. That's all I wanted, my home back. The Karen thrashed one last time, screaming at the officers. "This isn't over. I'll sue him. I'll sue all of you." But her voice cracked under the flashing lights, and no one believed her anymore. As a patrol car door slammed shut, I stood on the porch and let out a long breath. The cabin was quiet again, except for the soft sound of the lake against the shore. I looked at the crowd, dispersing, and said one final line that carried across the yard. I didn't fight for this country to be told I can't step foot on my own land. The patrol car rolled away, its lights fading into the trees, leaving only the hum of crickets and the soft glow of my porch lantern. I stood there, taking in the silence that finally belonged to me again. The table sat abandoned, half-empty glasses, broken bottles, and lies scattered across the wood. For a moment, I just looked at it all and let the anger drain out of me. One of the neighbors who had stayed behind stepped closer, her voice low but sincere. "We're sorry. We believed her. She acted like she had all the power." I shook my head. That's what people like her do. They talk loud. They wave fake rules around, and they hope no one ever questions them. But truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be seen. The Woman nodded slowly, shame in her eyes, before walking off into the night. I pushed open the cabin door, the familiar creak of the hinges greeting me like an old friend. The air inside still carried the smell of pine wood and the faint echo of laughter that wasn't mine. I set down my bag, ran a hand along the table I had built, and whispered almost to myself, home finally, out on the road. The last echoes of Karen's screams were swallowed by the dark. She had played queen for a week, but tonight her kingdom crumbled. And as I locked the door behind me, I knew this would be the story neighbors would whisper about for years. How the woman who pretended to rule everything was exposed by the very man she tried to erase. Justice wasn't loud. It wasn't messy. It was simple, sharp, and final. And in that quiet cabin by the lake, I smiled, knowing one thing. The land was mine. The truth was mine. And no one, not even a screaming Karen with fake power, could ever take it from me again.